What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul. I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. I've been in Japan for 20 years, and today I'm going to be talking about Japanese politeness, but I'm not going to be using that word. I'm actually going to be referring to it as courtesy and conscientiousness. Because to me, the politeness is the surface level thing, where it's how you have interpersonal interactions and the politeness you get when you go into a store and interact with staff. But I want to talk about what underlies that politeness, the conscientiousness or the courtesy that you find in Japanese society. And I'm going to divide this topic today into 3 points. I'm first going to talk about how that courtesy and conscientiousness manifests in society. Next, I'm going to talk about where it comes from and basically how it's instilled into generations of Japanese children. And finally, to put a little balance, I will bring up some of the negatives of that over-conscientiousness. Basically, nothing's perfect, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of those at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around until then. Okay, let's start off right away with some of the ways that conscientiousness and courtesy manifests in Japanese society. The first one I'm going to talk about is something I've talked about on the channel before, and that is the concept of meiwaku, or not causing trouble for others. Essentially, Japanese society is always paying attention to how others are feeling. You're paying attention to others around you so that you're not causing any trouble for anyone, and you are on guard on your behavior, if we're being perfectly honest. It's kind of like being on guard for what you are trying to, or I should say how you are maneuvering through society. Now, the way you see this in everyday life is people being quiet on the trains. You don't want to be noisy and disturb other people. You see this in that you almost never have people get into your face about anything. Like, I feel like if I walked down the street of Chicago, within 10 minutes, someone would probably have accosted me about something, or come up to me, or gotten in my face about something. It seems like every time I visit the States, like, it just happens. It's pretty much the golden rule. You treat others how you want to be treated yourself, and in general in that Japan is you want to make sure you're not causing any trouble for anyone. Another way this conscientiousness arises is always being on time. Basically, you are on time, or better yet, 5 to 10 minutes early in Japan, because you're consciously thinking about not causing inconvenience for others. If you're late, you're causing other people to be inconvenienced because, you know, they have to wait for you and they wanted to get started on something, etc. So that's part of the punctuality of Japanese society. It also comes out in appearance. Appearance in Japan is important. People are conscientious about appearance because you are, again, not really dressing for yourself or putting a package on something for yourself. You're showing others that you care enough to be bothered. When you give gifts in Japan, the packaging is very important. That's why things tend to be very over-packaged in Japan, because the appearance is important. I remember being in Australia and having this quandary about bringing chocolate back for coworkers. I was in the shop and I had two choices, basically. I had choice number one, which was Cadbury, normal Australian chocolate that Australians actually eat. But it was just a chocolate bar, no special packaging, didn't look very nice. The other option were koala-shaped chocolates in this beautiful box that said Australia on it, and I think it had a picture of the Opera House on the front. And so the packaging was beautiful. Chocolate was made in Indonesia, and I'm pretty sure that ordinary Australians don't buy the koala-shaped chocolate. It's just, they're going to buy the Cadbury. So it's like, do I buy what the Australians actually enjoy and eat and is kind of representative of Australia? Or do I buy the thing that looks Australia but isn't even made there, but has beautiful packaging? If you travel around Japan, or if you work in Japan, you'll note that it tends to be a very formal country when it comes to dress. Uniforms are the norm, and the salaryman's suit for business attire is very much a uniform. It's not about dressing for yourself, it's about dressing for the expectations of others, and the uniform is showing others that you're taking your job seriously, that you're dressing to the code. And it's not just for jobs. university students are much better dressed in Japan than they are in the States, where you kind of roll out of bed in jeans and a hoodie that you fell asleep in and just go to class. In Japan, they're not necessarily dressing up, but they're taking a lot more care about their appearance, meaning selecting something that they think looks nice and that will be presentable, and it isn't necessarily expensive, but it looks very put together. Again, it's conscientiousness. It's the care of what others might think of your image. And just two more ways that the conscientiousness and courtesy appears in Japan, and by no means is this a comprehensive list. If you know of any others that you would like to mention that you've experienced, how these manifest in Japan, please let us know in the comments below. But hang on, I lied. It's not two more, it's three more. Those narrow streets I was just walking around were so full of screaming kids, noisy motorbikes, and random construction guys with chainsaws and leaf blowers that I kept losing my concentration and having to stop and restart the video. So the one I forgot to talk about is actually probably my favorite one, and that is one way that Japanese show conscientiousness and courtesy towards others is the multi-layered thank yous and apologies that are given. Apologizing and giving thanks in Japan is kind of an art form. I'll give an example that just happened today, which was I was in an office. I had some administrative work I had to do, and it's for my status as a student. And basically at the end of the session where the staff was helping me, I gave a huge thank you. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm sorry I took up this precious time that is, it's a very busy season for you, and you took all this time to help just me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And again, it was kind of this layer upon layer of thank you and apology for taking time and thank you for helping me out, etc. And they're all like, oh no, of course, it's our pleasure, it's our job, and it's no problem, and thank you for coming in so that we could go over this in detail. And it was this dance back and forth. And that happens all the time in Japan. The thank yous and the apologies are very elaborate, and that's basically you're trying to show very strongly that you do care about other people's time and that you care about other people's help that they're giving to you. And so thank yous and apologies are a big deal. And that's one of the ways that it manifests in the Japanese language. I was actually thinking about making a video entirely about apologies and thank yous as kind of a Japanese lesson video. So if you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments below. But if you're coming here as a tourist, or if you're coming here to live and you don't have very much Japanese yet, honestly, if you can do thank yous and apologies in a very Japanese manner, it'll get you a long way, honestly. It's one of those daily life skills that is a good thing to have even when your Japanese level isn't very high. So yeah, let me know if you'd like to see that. Now, let's go back to those noisy streets. One other way that it manifests is, of course, in the service industry. As you know, Japan's service is legendary. And very often that comes from a real sense of pride of Japanese people who take their job seriously, not just because they want to do the job well, but because they want the customer to have the best experience possible. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about the convenience store worker who's working for minimum wage and they're just going by the manual that tells them what to say to customers, but more the kind of advanced service positions, like you're working in a hotel or a ryokan, or your staff for the train, or like the airlines. I just recently watched this video of an airline reviewer on YouTube. That's one of the rabbit holes I like to go down on YouTube. I watch a lot of the airline reviewers. Basically, the YouTuber went up and he said to the ground staff, "Good morning, I'm here to check in." And the ground staff's reply was, "To?" And hearing this, I guess I've been in Japan too long, but my thought was, why would you ever reply to a customer like that? You would say, "Oh, good morning, where are you headed?" Or "Good morning," or "Hello," some kind of greeting, and then say, "Where is your flight going today?" To? It's just, if that was me in the video, if that happened to me, I would just be taken aback. I'd need a moment, because that would be a reverse culture shock. Like, wait, what? Really? That's how you're answering me? Like I said, I've been in Japan too long, I guess. There's this concept in Japan called omotenashi, and it's basically going above and beyond normal service and the idea is that you're helping your customer and giving them a level of enjoyment and actually catering to their needs or wants before they even realize they have that need or want. So it's going above and beyond in a way. Now, that's not exclusive to Japan, but it's definitely instilled value here. The last one I'm going to mention is the concept of giri, or obligation. This is in Japanese society where you give gifts or do favors for someone, and that is meant to be reciprocated. Basically, you do incur a kind of obligation to others who help you, and those who you help have kind of an obligation to help you some way in the future. So that's this give and take, I scratch your back, you scratch mine sort of thing. That's actually pretty common in a lot of Asian cultures, I understand, certainly in China as well. So giri is another way that in Japanese society you're showing courtesy and conscientiousness. Basically, you're keeping social norms and keeping good relationships smooth and peaceful. Okay, how do these things arise though? How do children learn and internalize these things from very early ages? Well, the first thing I could mention is when children are being raised by their parents, one thing I've noticed, and I've talked to a lot of parents about this, and foreigners who are married to Japanese, and asked them how their spouse goes about parenting. And in America, there's a propensity to talk about right and wrong, like, don't do this because it's wrong. Don't do this, it's bad. Do this, this is polite. But it's more of an emphasis on the personal individual's behavior. You should be a polite person. You should not do these bad things because it's bad. But in Japan, parenting is often about saying, don't do this because what will others think? Don't do this because what if someone sees you? So it's shame. Like, don't do this because you'll bring shame onto yourself from others' views of you. And the boogeyman in my family, my wife would always invoke my brother-in-law. So my wife would always say to our kid, if you hold the rice bowl like that, what is your uncle going to say? So it's like, uncle is really strict. He's super kibishi about rules. So if you're doing it wrong, he's going to be upset the next time you eat dinner with him. So from a very young age, instilled in the kids, others are going to be watching your behavior and you should behave accordingly. The group dynamics starts super early. The conscientiousness of being able to work with a group and put a group's needs before your own starts in kindergarten. I was amazed to watch our kid do a music performance with their kindergarten group, 3, 4, 5 years of age. They're doing these musical numbers where each of the children are playing a musical instrument and they're all coordinated together. And I'm just thinking about the chaos of my kindergarten years. I mean, we weren't doing musical ensembles. So the kids are already learning how to work together in that kind of environment. I have a bit of advice. If you move to Japan, do not live next to an elementary school grounds where they're going to have sports teams out and practicing, because 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning, the baseball team is going to be out there and they're going to be chanting, ah, bah, bah. They got all these coordinated chants that they call and response back and forth, and it's about team building and group building, and that is constant communication. Sports, it's all about the team. Like in Japan, famously basketball teams do a lot of passing and less shooting. Shots on goal in Japanese football or soccer are much less, because pass around, don't all just try to take the glory for yourself. In baseball, Japan is famous, at least in the past, not so much anymore, but they're famous for doing lots of bunting, which, if you're not familiar with baseball, basically means that it's a means of sacrificing your status as a batter to advance a runner on the field, so that you're basically sacrificing your chance to hit a home run or something else in order to help your team out. So these values of team effort, putting your team and your class and your classmates before your own needs and desires, is very, very strong in Japan. Just the classroom itself. You are in a class, your classroom is set, all of the teachers come to you, you work together in a team to serve lunch to your classmates. So like the big pots of kyushoku or school lunch come in, and you work together in elementary school to serve those to your classmates. There's no staff doing that for you. You work together to clean your school. I know that's a famous meme you see all over the internet, how Japanese children clean their own school, but it's true, it actually happens. Honestly, kids aren't very good at the cleaning. It's a lot of kind of pushing dust from this corner to that corner, but I mean, they're working together, so that's the point. And finally, you see it manifest in the actual work that children and older students do in school. When it comes to discussion and working together in a group, you don't take a lead and necessarily throw your opinions around. There's a lot of students I've had come into my classes at the university, and they'll tell me, like, I've never really had to give my honest opinion on something before because it's usually a consensus that we make with our classmates, or I just kind of follow the lead of my seniors and that kind of thing. So just going out on a limb and giving your opinion, or saying you're going against the grain, saying that I don't want to do this, or we should really think of it this way, is not very common in Japan. It's something, you don't want to make waves, you want to go with the group consensus, and as such, like, this is instilled from the education system, the parents, the leaders, and also this whole senpai kohai system in Japan, where you have your senior students who police the rules of the junior students in the elementary schools, the junior high schools, the high schools. You learn the social norms from your senior students just as much as you do, or maybe more so than you do, from your teachers and from your parents. And of course that continues on into adult life. You have your senpai or your seniors in your company or in your place of work, and they are the ones who are going to show you the ropes and how to act and the manners in a lot of respects. So it's starting at a very early age, and it's enforced all throughout. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, there are some dark sides or negatives to this sort of conscientiousness or courtesy. Like, we think of those as positive words, and generally they are a good thing. I'm going to say that on the whole, it's a very positive thing for Japan, Japanese society, and Japanese people, but it does lead to a few problems. First, I'll bring up giri, or obligation. That can be onersome. Which one is it? Let me know in the comments. Obligation that you incur for others. It can be something that's a little annoying to be, have to deal with. Like, I just remember going on my honeymoon with my wife, and it felt like 50% of our honeymoon was figuring out what to buy for the friends and family back home. Like, our honeymoon was half about how we're going to fulfill our obligation to give gifts to everyone back in Japan. And for me, that was a little bit annoying at the time. When it comes to not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to cause problems or make waves, basically avoiding any kind of confrontation. This is why sometimes Japanese people can seem very passive and don't defend themselves when it comes to these nuisance streamers or nuisance YouTubers who come and film videos where they shouldn't, and dance in the middle of Shibuya Scramble or try to annoy people on the train, because very oftentimes Japanese won't stand up for themselves, or they won't get confrontational about it because they're just so used to avoiding that sort of thing, and so can end up being seen as targets. And that's really unfortunate. And a weird side effect of this lack of assertiveness is it actually makes learning Japanese language for foreign people like myself a little bit more difficult in Japan, because if you're struggling with the language, or you're struggling with how to say something, Japanese won't correct you. They won't jump in and say, oh, you should say it like this, or don't say that, you should say it this way. They just let you muddle along and won't correct you because they don't want to confront you on your Japanese. They're more likely to just say, oh, your Japanese is great. How long have you been in Japan? That kind of thing. It also manifests as this pause that Japanese people will give you when you're hunting for vocabulary. Like, I'll be saying something, I'm searching for a vocabulary word, and I'll be like, nandake, nantyudake, tango dete konai. And they'll just patiently wait for you to figure it out. Whereas from the context, they probably know what you're looking for. They probably know the word that you're looking for, but they don't feed it to you. And finally, this conscientiousness can lead to a lot of exhaustion for Japanese people and Japanese lifestyle, because you're being so conscientious and courteous towards your coworkers about getting work done and not being the first to leave and not being the one to stick out and try to do things more efficiently. And so you end up basically with a work culture that's far more exhausting than it might need to be, because you're trying to show everyone how hard you're working for everyone else's benefit. Also, the mental exhaustion of constantly being aware of not doing something to cause trouble for others, like watching and being careful that you're being polite and that you're doing the correct manners and that you're not doing anything at all that could be construed as something that is troublesome for anyone else. And these two things together lead to, frankly, some of the shut-in or hikikomori phenomena in Japan, like people who just shut themselves off because they feel like they just can't function in society normally and comfortably. So it's just easier to stay in your room and let your parents bring meals to your door. And then finally, of course, the suppression of yourself and your opinions. You may always feel like you're hiding who you really are, because your honne, what you really think, is different than your tatemae, which is what you show or tell to the world. And that concept exists in cultures all around the world, of course, but in Japan it just goes to a totally different level. So that can also be mentally exhausting, or just you feel like you're wearing a mask all the time. It's not as extreme as all that. I mean, I don't want it to sound overly dramatic, but there definitely are trade-offs to keeping this certain level of courtesy and conscientiousness for people around you. But at the end of the day, it's one of the things that really makes Japanese society what it is, that makes it run so smoothly. Sorry for a lot of cuts in this video. I know I seemed to bounce around a lot as I was filming. There were lots of scooters that went by. There were construction sites and leaf blowers going on. And then there were those times when there were kids that I was trying to avoid filming. So yeah, it jumped around a bit more today than I normally do when it comes to editing. I hope that wasn't too off-putting. But if you made it this far in the video and you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button, and for sure like and share it. That is the single best way to get my videos out to a larger audience and help the channel to grow. You can also join my Patreon, that'll be linked below, and I am partnered with Sakura Co, an artisanal Japanese snack box that is a subscription, and if you use my code Exjapter at checkout and the link below, you will get $5 off your first order. Okay, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Hope to catch you on the next one. Peace.